"Don't save me," the great wolf said inside her mind. But Clara Bennett planted both hands against his rain-soaked chest and pushed anyway. The last safe rock rose barely 3 feet above the raging river, a narrow shelf of black stone surrounded by white water. Behind her, storm glass falls roared like the whole mountain was breaking apart. Beneath her boots, the rock trembled. The enormous black and silver wolf tried to stand, but his injured leg folded under him. His silver eyes locked on hers with an intelligence no wild creature should have possessed. Clara felt his heartbeat beneath her palms, fast and fading, each beat traveling through her fingers as if it belonged inside her own chest. "You're going to make it," she whispered. The wolf shook his massive head. Water surged around Clara's knees, cold enough to steal her breath. A broken branch spun past and vanished over the edge. There was room on the higher rock for only one of them. She knew it. The wolf knew it too. He pressed his forehead against hers, warm despite the rain, and something silent passed between them. Not fear. Not surrender. Recognition. "Don't waste the life I'm giving you," Clara said. She braced one boot against a crack in the stone, wrapped both arms beneath his shoulders, and pushed with everything she had left. For one impossible second, neither of them moved. Then the wolf found his strength. His front paws struck the higher rock. His body followed, heavy and shaking, until he landed safely above the flood. Relief flashed through Clara so sharply it almost felt like joy. Then the stone beneath her split. The wolf lunged back, catching the edge of her coat between his teeth. Clara looked up at him through the rain. Those silver eyes were no longer wild. They were terrified. The fabric stretched, tore. "Live," she breathed. The river took her. 6 hours earlier, Clara had been standing beneath a gray morning sky at the old Stormglass Dam, carrying a wooden toolbox no one else wanted to touch. The Pine Ridge wolves moved around her in ceremonial coats, preparing banners for the Alpha King's arrival, while pretending not to notice the cracks spreading through the dam's western wall. Clara noticed. She always noticed what others ignored. The trembling birds in the trees, the uneasy horses near the road, the thin stream of water slipping through stone that had remained dry for 50 years. "Ryan," she called, setting down the toolbox. Ryan Mercer turned slowly, irritation already hardening his handsome face. "The wall is leaking." He glanced toward the narrow stream, then back at her plain brown coat. "It rained last night. This isn't rainwater." Clara touched the stone and felt a deep vibration beneath her palm, like a frightened heartbeat trapped inside the mountain. "Something is wrong." Ryan smiled just enough for the others to hear the cruelty in his voice. "And the wolfless Omega understands dams now?" A few nearby wolves laughed. Clara lowered her hand, but she did not lower her eyes. Far above them, hidden beyond the pine-covered ridge, something gave a low, distant crack. This time even the birds stopped singing. Clara kept her hand against the damp stone until the vibration faded, but the silence in the trees remained. Even the wind seemed to be holding its breath. Ryan Mercer looked toward the ridge for half a second, then forced a laugh. "Old timber shifting," he said. "Nothing more." Clara studied the western wall. Water traced a thin line through the mortar, clear at first, then cloudy with pale blue dust. Her stomach tightened. Moonstone. The ancient mineral had been placed inside the dam generations ago to strengthen it during floods, and no ordinary rain could wash it free. "The seal is failing," she said. Ryan stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Your job is to carry tools, Clara. Not to frighten everyone before the king arrives." Behind him, workers raised silver banners along the road while cooks prepared tables beneath white tents. Pine Ridge had spent weeks polishing every visible corner of the valley, hoping the Alpha King would see order, loyalty, and strength. Clara saw loose bolts, frightened animals, and water gathering where it should not have been. She had learned long ago that appearances mattered more than warnings when the warning came from someone like her. At 22, Clara was the only adult in Pine Ridge who had never shifted. Her wolf had never answered the moon, never stirred beneath her skin, never given the pack a reason to respect her. Ryan called her wolfless. Others preferred broken. She had stopped correcting them. What they did not understand was that silence did not mean emptiness. Clara felt things other wolves missed. She could calm a panicked horse by placing one hand against its neck. She could sense when a fox was trapped before hearing it cry. Pain reached her through touch as clearly as heat from a fire. The pack considered that talent useful only in barns and kennels. Clara considered it a promise that suffering should never be ignored. A bay horse tied near the supply wagon suddenly pulled against its rope. Its eyes rolled toward the river. Clara crossed the muddy ground and rested her palm against its shoulder. Fear rushed through her, cold and urgent. Not fear of thunder. Fear of something moving below. "Easy," she whispered. The horse settled slightly, but kept staring upstream. Ryan watched with open impatience. "Take the animal back to the lower stable." Clara turned sharply. "The lower stable is beside the floodplain. Then move quickly. We need to clear the valley." The workers nearby grew quiet. Ryan's smile disappeared. "You will not embarrass this pack with another one of your feelings." Clara looked from his face to the blue dust leaking from the wall. Someone had removed Moonstone from inside the dam. She was certain now. Before she could speak, a horn sounded from the northern road. Every wolf straightened, believing the royal party had arrived. But Clara heard something else beneath the horn. Far upstream and hidden by the forest, a deep, unfamiliar howl answered from the mountain, followed by the frightened cry of a creature falling into fast water. High above the dam, Ethan Blackwood ran beneath the pines in the form no royal court had seen in years. Atlas, his great wolf, moved through the storm-dark forest like a shadow edged in silver. He had left the royal guards 12 miles north with orders to continue toward Pine Ridge without him. A king arriving beneath banners would be shown polished roads and rehearsed loyalty. A lone wolf could discover what people hid. For 3 months, Moonstone had vanished from protected sites across the northern territories. The thefts had seemed small at first, a missing fragment from a bridge, a broken seal beneath an old watchtower, a shipment that never reached the capital. Then Ethan received word that the ancient dam above Pine Ridge had begun losing power. If its inner stones were removed, one hard storm could endanger every home in the valley. Atlas slowed near a clearing overlooking the river. Voices drifted between the trees. Ryan Mercer stood beside a wagon covered with a gray canvas sheet. 2 unfamiliar men were loading pale blue stones into wooden crates, moving quickly whenever thunder covered the sound. Ethan recognized the glow immediately. "Moonstone. The king will be here before noon," one man said. Ryan gave a quiet laugh. "He will see banners, music, and a loyal pack. He will not inspect the inside of a dam. The western wall is already leaking. Then we blame the storm." Ethan stepped from the trees. All 3 men froze. Ryan stared at the enormous wolf, and the confidence left his face. Atlas lowered his head, silver eyes fixed on the royal crest carved into one of the stolen stones. Ryan reached slowly toward the hunting bough beside the wagon. Ethan could have revealed himself. One shift, one command, and every wolf in Pine Ridge would have known their king stood before them. But he needed to learn who else was involved. He backed toward the riverbank, inviting Ryan to believe the animal was frightened. Ryan took the bait. "Drive it away," he ordered. The strangers moved forward, shouting and striking branches against the ground. Atlas turned and ran, not from fear, but toward the narrow trail that led away from the dam. If they followed, the evidence would remain unguarded for the royal guards to find. He heard Ryan behind him. Then came the sharp release of a bowstring. Something struck Atlas near his shoulder. There was no deep wound, only a sudden burning cold spreading through his leg. Silver. His stride faltered. The earth beneath the river trail had softened under days of rain. One paw slipped over the edge, then another. Atlas tried to climb back, but the muddy bank gave way beneath his weight. He fell into the rushing water. The current pulled him between rocks and broken branches, carrying him toward the distant roar of Stormglass Falls. Through the haze of silver, Ethan sensed someone far below, a quiet presence beside the dam. Warm hands, a steady heart, the same unseen soul that had brushed against his dreams beneath every full moon. Then above the river, he heard a woman's voice. "Hold on. I am coming." Clara did not stop to wonder why the voice had sounded inside her instead of across the river. She followed it through the trees, pushing past wet branches as the ground sloped sharply downward. The roar of the current grew louder with every step. When she reached the riverbank, She saw him caught between two dark rocks nearly 40 feet from shore. The wolf was larger than any she had ever seen. His black coat streaked with silver that flashed whenever lightning crossed the sky. One front leg rested at an unnatural angle, and a short silver-tipped arrow remained lodged near his shoulder. The current struck him again and again, but he kept his head above the water. His eyes found hers. Clara forgot how to breathe. They were not the eyes of a frightened animal. They were watchful, controlled, and full of a terrible exhaustion. "I see you," she called. "Do not move." The wolf gave her a look that felt almost offended. Clara might have laughed if the river had not been carrying broken limbs toward the falls. She tied one end of a rope around a pine tree and looped the other around her waist. The rope was meant for hauling supply crates, not rescuing an animal that looked as if it weighed more than 800 pounds, but it was all she had. She stepped into the water. Cold closed around her boots, climbed past her knees, and pulled hard enough to make her stumble. The wolf tried to rise. "Stay down," Clara said. His ears shifted toward her voice, and to her surprise he obeyed. She moved sideways, feeling for stable stones beneath the muddy water. Twice the current nearly turned her around. Each time the wolf watched her with growing alarm. When she finally reached him, his breath touched her face, warm and uneven. Up close, she saw faint symbols woven through the silver fur along his neck, markings that resembled the royal crest stamped on Pine Ridge banners. Before she could study them, pain brushed against her senses. It came from him in waves, cold where the silver had entered, heavy where exhaustion had settled into his muscles. Clara placed one palm against his chest. His heartbeat struck her hand like a distant drum. Then another sensation opened beneath it. Loneliness. Duty. A crown carried so long it had become a burden. Clara pulled her hand back, startled. The wolf stared at her as though he had felt her too. "What are you?" she whispered. His gaze shifted toward the arrow. Clara understood. She wrapped her fingers around the wooden shaft and carefully eased it free without looking at the wound. The wolf shuddered but made no sound. She pressed folded cloth against his shoulder, then noticed a small emblem carved into the arrowhead. A pine tree divided by a crescent moon. The Mercer family seal. Clara's blood turned cold. Ryan had not simply ignored the danger at the dam. He had been here. Somewhere upstream men shouted her name. The wolf lifted his head, suddenly alert. Clara gathered the rope and looked toward the narrow trail beside the river. "Can you walk?" He forced himself upright, towering over her even while injured. For one strange second, she felt safer beside him than she had ever felt inside her own pack. Then a deep crack rolled across the valley. Clara looked back toward the dam. The thin line of leaking water had become a silver stream pouring through the western wall. The silver stream pouring through the western wall widened before Clara could take another breath. A low tremor moved beneath her boots, and somewhere above the trees, stones shifted with a sound like distant thunder. The great wolf turned toward the dam, every muscle tightening despite his injured leg. Clara followed his gaze and understood the danger at once. The valley below was still crowded with workers, horses, and families preparing for the royal arrival. "They do not know," she whispered. The wolf looked at her, then toward the narrow trail leading uphill. He wanted to return. He could barely stand. "No," Clara said, tightening the rope around her waist. "We find higher ground first." Voices broke through the rain. Ryan appeared between the pines with two men behind him, all three breathing hard from the descent. His expression changed when he saw the wolf standing beside her. For one brief moment, fear revealed itself. Then he noticed the arrow in Clara's hand. "Step away from that animal," he ordered. Clara raised the arrowhead so the Mercer seal caught the gray light. "You shot him." Ryan's jaw tightened. "It is a rogue." "A rogue wearing royal markings?" The men behind him exchanged uneasy looks. Ryan moved closer, keeping his voice calm. "You are frightened, Clara. Give me the arrow, and I will take you back." The wolf shifted between them, not growling, only standing firm. Clara felt the warning in the way his body angled toward Ryan. "You removed Moonstone from the dam," she said. "That is why it is breaking." Ryan's calm expression vanished. "You have always mistaken feelings for facts." Another crack rolled through the valley. This one was louder. Birds burst from the treetops, flying south in a dark wave. Clara heard shouting near the tents below. At last, the pack had seen the water. Ryan glanced toward the sound, then reached for the rope tied around Clara's waist. The wolf stepped forward and Ryan stopped. "The old maintenance path," Clara said quietly, remembering a map she had seen in the supply room. "It follows the ridge above the river. We can reach the emergency bell." She did not wait for permission. She guided the wolf toward a narrow trail hidden behind a wall of wet ferns. The path climbed sharply, barely 3 feet wide in places, with the river rushing far below. The wolf limped beside her, his shoulder brushing hers whenever the ground became unstable. Behind them, Ryan called her name, promising safety in a voice that no longer sounded kind. Clara did not look back. The trail ended at an old rope bridge crossing a narrow gorge. The wooden board swayed above the white water. Clara stepped onto it first, testing each plank. The wolf followed slowly. They were halfway across when Ryan reached the far end. "Clara," he called. "Come back now." She turned. In his hand was the bridge release lever, rusted but still connected to the support line. Clara's heart sank. Ryan pulled it. The bridge tilted, not breaking but dropping hard on one side. Clara caught the rope railing. The great wolf lost his footing, then pressed his weight against her, keeping them both from sliding. Below, the river surged toward Stormglass Falls. Ahead, beyond the bridge, the mountain trail narrowed into a chain of dark rocks surrounded by rising water. Clara looked at the wolf's silver eyes. There was only one direction left. Toward the falls. The bridge shuddered beneath them as the support rope slipped another inch. Clara tightened both hands around the railing and forced herself to breathe. The great wolf stood pressed against her side, using his weight to keep the slanted boards from throwing them toward the river. Behind them, Ryan remained at the far end, one hand still resting on the release lever. "There is nowhere left to go," he called. Clara looked ahead. The final section of the bridge hung only a few feet above a line of black rocks leading toward the falls. Beyond those rocks, the water disappeared into white mist. "There is always somewhere," she whispered. She loosened the rope from her waist and tied it around the wolf's broad chest. He watched her hands, silver eyes narrowed with understanding. "When I move, you move." Clara stepped sideways. The bridge dipped again. The wolf followed, limping but steady, placing each paw where she had tested the boards. 10 feet remained. Then 8. Then 5. A deep roar rolled through the gorge, louder than thunder. Clara turned toward the dam. The western wall bowed outward. For one suspended second, the entire valley seemed to hold still. Then water burst through the opening in a silver wave. Bells began ringing below, wild and uneven, but the sound was swallowed by the river. "Go," Clara said. She jumped from the bridge onto the first rock. The wolf followed as the bridge twisted behind them. They moved from stone to stone while the current rose around their feet. Each landing became smaller, each gap wider. The rope between them pulled tight whenever the wolf's injured leg weakened. Clara could feel his exhaustion traveling through it. Ahead, one high rock stood above the flood, no more than 6 feet across. It was the only place the rising water had not reached. Clara studied the distance. The wolf could make it with help. She could not make it after him. He seemed to understand at the same moment. He stopped and pushed his head against her shoulder, urging her forward. "No," she said. He pushed again. The word entered her mind with startling clarity. "Clara." She froze. He knew her name. Beneath the roar of the falls, something warm opened between them, a thread of light stretching from his heart to hers. Through it she felt his fear. Not for himself. For her. Clara wrapped both hands around the rope. "You have people waiting for you," she said. "I can feel it." His silver eyes held hers. Duty, loneliness, and a quiet strength passed through the bond. So did a truth she could not yet understand. The mountain shook. Water surged over the rock behind them. Clara braced her boots, pulled the rope, and guided him toward the final ledge. The wolf resisted, trying to turn back. "Please," she whispered. "Let this matter." Another wave struck the stones. Clara gathered every remaining ounce of strength and pushed beneath his shoulders. The wolf leaped. His front paws reached the high rock, and Clara pulled the rope until he found his footing. Relief swept through her. Then the stone beneath her shifted. The wolf spun and caught the edge of her coat between his teeth. For one desperate moment they held on to each other. The fabric began to tear. Clara looked into his silver eyes and smiled through the rain. Live. The coat slipped free. The river lifted her from the rock and carried her toward the mist, while the light between their hearts burned brighter than the storm. The great wolf stood alone above the flood, staring at the place where Clara had disappeared. For one breath the storm seemed to pause with him. Then a howl rose from his chest, deep enough to roll across the gorge and silence every voice on the ridge. Silver light moved through his rain-soaked fur. His enormous shape blurred, folded inward and changed. When the light faded, Ethan Blackwood stood on the high rock in a torn black shirt and soaked trousers, one hand pressed against his injured shoulder. The royal crest gleamed faintly against his skin. Ryan's face lost all color. Behind him, the first members of the royal guard emerged from the forest, led by Daniel Cross. They stopped when they saw their king surrounded by rising water. "Your Majesty," Daniel called. Ethan did not answer. His eyes remained fixed on the falls. The bond between him and Clara had become a thin silver thread, fragile but unbroken. Through it came cold darkness and the faint rhythm of a heart still fighting. She was alive. Ryan backed away from the bridge lever. "I did not know it was you," he said. Ethan finally looked at him. There was no shouting in his voice when he spoke. That made the words heavier. "You knew the dam protected hundreds of lives." Ryan opened his mouth, but nothing came. Daniel crossed the remaining section of the bridge with two guards and reached the rocks below Ethan. One of them carried a royal cloak, but Ethan ignored it. "The western wall has failed," Daniel said. "The lower valley is being evacuated. We found crates of moonstone near the ridge." His gaze moved to Ryan. "And witnesses." Ethan stepped down from the high rock with Daniel's help. Every movement sent a wave of silver cold through his shoulder, but Clara's distant heartbeat mattered more. Ryan dropped to his knees in the mud. "Please, Your Majesty. I can explain." Ethan stopped beside him. For years, people had called the Alpha King ruthless because he made decisions without hesitation. In that moment, anger offered him the easiest decision of all. Then Clara's voice returned in his memory. "Let this matter." She had saved him without knowing his name, his rank, or what he could give her. Her strength had not come from power over someone weaker. It had come from choosing mercy when fear would have been easier. Ethan turned to Daniel. "Secure the Moonstone. Take Ryan and the others into custody. No one is to harm them." Ryan looked up in disbelief. Daniel understood immediately. "The council will judge them." "With evidence," Ethan said. "Not rage." Another pulse traveled through the bond. Weak. Distant. Real. Ethan faced the falls. Nearly 80 feet of white water crashed into a basin hidden by mist and broken stone. Daniel followed his gaze. "Search teams are moving downstream." "She is not downstream." Ethan closed his eyes and felt the silver thread pulling toward the cliff itself. Behind the falling water, something ancient answered the bond with a soft blue glow. He stepped toward the river. Daniel caught his arm. "You are injured." Ethan looked at him, and for the first time Daniel saw fear in his king's eyes. "She gave me the only safe place," Ethan said. "I will not leave her alone in the dark." He entered the cold water, following the heartbeat behind the falls. Ethan stepped through the falling water and entered a darkness filled with blue light. The roar of the falls softened behind the stone curtain, replaced by the slow echo of water moving through an ancient cavern. Moonstone covered the walls in pale veins, glowing beneath the surface like stars trapped inside ice. The bond pulled him forward. One careful step, then another. His shoulder burned with every movement, but Clara's heartbeat remained ahead of him, faint and steady enough to guide him deeper. "Clara," he called. His voice returned from the cavern walls. No answer came. He followed a narrow ledge above a pool of clear water until he saw a brown coat spread across the stone. Clara lay near the edge of the pool, soaked and motionless, one arm wrapped around something small. Ethan crossed the distance and dropped beside her. A young wolf pup trembled beneath her coat, frightened but alive. Even after the river had taken her, Clara had found another life to protect. Ethan touched 2 fingers to her wrist. Her pulse fluttered beneath his hand. Relief nearly broke the control he had carried for years. "You are not alone," he said. "I found you." Clara's eyelids moved, but did not open. The pup gave a quiet whimper and pressed closer to her side. Ethan placed his hand over hers. The moment their skin met, the silver thread between them blazed through the cavern. Light moved across the Moonstone walls and gathered beneath Clara's body. The pool began to glow. Warmth rose through Ethan's palm, gentle at first, then strong enough to push back the cold that clung to her. Clara drew a deeper breath. Her fingers tightened faintly around his. A shape appeared in the blue light behind her, not solid but clear enough to steal Ethan's breath. A white wolf stood above Clara, luminous and calm, with eyes the color of the morning sky. Ethan had seen the image only in the oldest royal records. A healer wolf, a guardian born not to conquer, but to restore what fear and pride had broken. Pine Ridge had called Clara empty because her wolf had remained silent. The truth was far greater. Her spirit had been waiting for an act of courage powerful enough to awaken it. The white wolf lowered its head toward Ethan, then dissolved into silver light that entered Clara's chest. She gasped and opened her eyes. For a moment, confusion clouded them. Then she recognized him. "The wolf," she whispered. Ethan bowed his head. "You saved him." Clara studied his silver eyes, the same eyes that had watched her from the river. Understanding slowly replaced confusion. "You are him." "My name is Ethan Blackwood." Her breath caught. Even hidden from the world, the name of the Alpha King carried weight. Ethan did not reach for authority. He stayed on his knees beside her. "You saved me before you knew I wore a crown," he said. "Let me save you without asking for anything in return." Clara looked down at the pup beneath her arm, then back at him. "Get the little one out first." A quiet smile touched Ethan's face. Even now, she chose another life before her own. He gathered the pup carefully, then offered Clara his free hand. This time she took it. As he helped her stand, white light flickered briefly in her eyes, and somewhere beyond the cavern, the storm began to fade. Ethan emerged from behind the falls with the wolf pup in one arm and Clara walking beside him, her hand resting lightly on his. The storm had weakened to a silver rain. Across the gorge, royal guards and Pine Ridge families stood in stunned silence. Daniel Cross was the first to move. Relief crossed his face when he saw his king alive, but his gaze settled on Clara with something deeper than surprise. Respect. Ethan guided her across the secured path toward the gathering field, where the stolen Moonstone had been arranged beside the broken crates. Ryan Mercer stood under guard near the old dam road. His confidence was gone. When Clara approached, he lowered his eyes. "I was protecting the pack," he said. Clara looked at the damaged wall, the frightened families, and the blue stones that had nearly cost them their home. "You were protecting your pride." Ethan stepped forward, and the entire pack bowed. Clara remained standing. For the first time in her life, she did not make herself smaller. Ethan ordered the evidence delivered to the Northern Council, and placed Ryan and his partners in lawful custody. No punishment would be decided in anger. Every witness would be heard. Every family harmed by the theft would have a voice. The people who had laughed at Clara now watched as the Alpha King turned toward her. He removed his royal cloak and placed it around her shoulders, not as a claim, but as warmth freely offered. Then before Pine Ridge, the royal guard, and the workers she had tried to warn, Ethan Blackwood lowered himself to one knee. A quiet breath moved through the crowd. "Clara Bennett," he said, "you gave me your last safe place when you believed I was only a wounded wolf. I will not use a crown to take what must be given by choice." The silver bond between them shimmered beneath the clearing sky. "Will you stand beside me?" Clara looked at the man, then at the great wolf living behind his silver eyes. "I saved a life," she said softly. "Not a throne." Ethan smiled. "That is why the throne can trust you." She placed her hand in his. Above them, the clouds opened and moonlight touched the ruined dam, the rescued pup, and the people beginning to rebuild together. Clara had once been called empty because her strength made no sound. Now an entire kingdom saw the truth. True strength was gentle, and love had found her at the edge of the world.